This video is going to be a film study look at the recent play of Terrion Arnold, the Lions' outside rookie corner that was drafted in the first round to high expectations, particularly his play in the last 2 weeks against the Texans and then against the Jaguars in the Lions' 52-6 win on Sunday. He looks a little bit smoother to me, a little more calm in some cases. He wasn't targeted as much, mind you, against the Jaguars, who were obviously overwhelmed. Nonetheless, I think the film looks a little bit improved from a Terrion Arnold perspective. He's received a lot of evaluation, criticism, in some cases rightfully so, for his coverage and a little bit of erratic behavior when the ball's in the air. Lions fans aren't wrong for wanting him to be a little bit more consistent in his reactions. He's oftentimes put in situations that do not appear comfortable to him, as they do for Carlton Davis III. And what I mean by that is press man situations where your back ends up to the quarterback. Carlton Davis III has been doing that for his whole career. We're probably a little bit off base or off target as fans, expecting him to play as well in those situations as CD3 does and has. I've done multiple videos on CD3 in the last month. I think it's pretty obvious he's playing at a high level. Amik Robertson is giving the Lions front office and fan base exactly what they wanted when Brad Holmes signed him. And then finally, Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph are playing as good as any two safeties in the league. Terrion Arnold, is he catching up to that level? I don't know about that. But he's certainly playing better, in my opinion. More consistent coverage, even though he did give up a touchdown against the Texans 2 games ago. Let's get to the film, and we'll focus on both of the most recent games. Try to spot shadow Arnold before most of the plays. It's going to be a zone example in the third quarter against the Texans. He just looks more smooth in his reactions to me. He looks a lot more prepared for the moment, a lot more prepared for motions, and I do actually like him in zone a little bit more than I like him in man. If I was to say what's his preferred strength or preferred coverage that we would consider strength, I would say it's in zone. So from that standpoint, you do have two drastically different corners in Terrion Arnold on one side and CD3 on the other, because CD3 is such a good man coverage corner. Nonetheless, I think he's got really good instincts in zone as well. He reacts well in these cover 2 situations where he's able to get his hands on receivers and disrupt the route. And in this case, he doesn't have anything to do with the target here, but he's playing a typical cover 2 hard corner, and he's pushing the receiver inside, or reroute, if you will. This is the ridiculous play action completion that C.J. Stroud makes over the middle, where you had a run fake to this side, and then one tight end emanating from the left side out into the flats, and then Dalton Schultz is going to sit down outside of the right hash. C.J. Stroud almost kind of throwing it back across the grain of the play, back across his body. 17-yard gain to Schultz. Ridiculous design there. There's only so many quarterbacks who can pull that off. C.J. Stroud happens to be one of them. Against the Texans, nonetheless, he was asked to play man at times. It's not like he was only playing zone. The first 2 plays that I showed you, here he is down to the boundary when CD3 was out of the game. I thought he looked better in man coverage against the Texans as well, and then he comes out against the Jaguars and stacks up another good performance, if you ask me. This is a play that I think tells you the mentality of Aaron Glenn. I covered this ad nauseum in 2 different videos. So you got a cowboy call out of your base defense. Terrion Arnold is on the right, along with CD3. And so the Lions, are expecting their inside linebackers, Jack Campbell, to cover the tight end, and Alex Anzalone, who's since been injured, to cover the running back. And they do it successfully. We're focusing on Terrion Arnold and his coverage, and how I think he might be better served in immediately situating himself away from the receiver, as opposed to staying on the line of scrimmage, standing his ground like CD3 does. They're just different players. They're different players with different levels of experience, and in my opinion, just based on what we've seen so far during the season, they might be better served playing a different style of press man, if that makes sense at all. Here's Terrion Arnold at the bottom, CD3 at the top. You can see they're both in off. He does react here, perhaps overreact, to a little bit of a move to the outside by John Mechie, or Michi. I still can't pronounce the guy's name. It happens right here We'll run it back a couple of times. His initial reaction is oftentimes to get his hands up in the air and try to make contact with the receiver. I guess grab him. And in this case, C.J. Stroud has got the ball out now already. As Mechie is making his move to the inside, free safety is occupied by a second route, and Terrion Arnold, unable to beat him to the inside, gives up a 15-yard touchdown late in the second quarter. So moving into the Jags game, I don't know that anyone, myself included, was saying, hey, I think he's playing better because you had seen him give up a touchdown, even though I think in general the reps looked smoother, a lot more calm against the Texans. Against the Jags, that's what you got pretty much for the whole game. It's not like they don't have talent, first of all. Their tight end, Evan Ingram, is very consistent in his output, his production, when he gets opportunities. Brian Thomas is a fantastic rookie wide receiver who's had an impact already, and the Jags made concerted efforts to try to get him the ball early in the game. They ran a reverse, I think, the first play of the game, first play of the game with him out of the backfield. Terrion Arnold stood up to Thomas, and I think played really well against some of the other veteran receivers that they've got out there, like Gabe Davis. So let's get to that film. They've again got a cowboy call. Arnold, CD3 on the same side, and then down to the bottom side, Anzalone is going to match up with the tight end. That coverage dynamic's going to have to change, if you ask me, with the signing of David Long. But we're going to talk about Arnold just a little bit. This is him matching up against Gabe Davis. I think the bigger wide receivers on intermediate to short routes might be the best matchup for him. So if they are going to go cowboy, put both receivers on the same side, and there is, let's say, for example, that the Lions defense was to go against their offense, and you wanted to lock up man-to-man. One guy's going to have to guard Jameson Williams. The other is going to have to guard St. Brown. I'm not sure how they would do that. My suspicion is that CD3 would probably match up with Jameson Williams because of the speed standpoint, and Terrion Arnold would try to match up with St. Brown. It'd be a difficult matchup in any case. My point is I think that keeping him away from the just lightning-fast guys is probably the way to go if you're going to play man-to-man, if you're going to commit to man-to-man pre-snap. It's a first quarter run concept, and this just parts of this video is just going to illustrate how well the secondary is playing in general for the Lions. They're in this kind of like 6-1 lightning look. It's based out of a 4-3 essentially. You've got one inside linebacker, Malcolm Rodriguez, who theoretically could be lined up back here. Alex Anzalone, a third inside linebacker who could theoretically be lined up back here in your 4-3 base look with this personnel on the field. Instead, they've walked them both up on the line of scrimmage to just create havoc and make everything bounce. And when I say 6-1 lightning, it is an actual name of a defense that people use against wing T type concepts where they want to make everything bounce, make everything spill to the outside, and then make tackles with their DBs and let their linebackers run inside out. In this case, Kirby Joseph makes it all work. It's a 2nd and 1, tackle for a loss to create a 3rd down. End zone angle of the same play. So here's what I mean. Alex Anzalone is stepping down to kind of create this solid edge and not let any gap be created such that Jack Campbell can't cover it to the inside. And in this case, Etienne bounces it. A fantastic run fit on the outside by Kirby Joseph, defeating the offensive lineman out in space for a tackle for loss. Technically, I think it only went down for a 0-yard gain. So the very next play, and we do have a man situation down here matching up with these three. Campbell is going to move over towards the bunch side. To give by Mac Jones. DJ Reader creating havoc. Josh Pascal also slanting into the B gap. Mac Jones giving it nonetheless. And the Lions get a stop on 3rd down. Going to focus on pass plays here pretty much the rest of this video. You do have Terrion Arnold up to the top. You're kind of losing him because of the frame. This is going to be a target against CD3. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is going to be a target against Arnold up to the top of the screen. Essentially, you have an opportunity to throw a back shoulder fade here. Mac Jones, I think, tries to do this. It's Gabe Davis. And again, I think that from from a personnel standpoint, from a body frame and speed standpoint, he might be better served on some of these bigger wide receivers. I do think there's a little bit of an attempt to extend his arms by Davis somewhere up here around like the 48 or something like that. I'm talking about right now. It looks like he's almost getting his right arm out. The ball is in the air. Davis is unable to react to it. Arnold isn't reacting to it either. For us, as Lions fans watching it occur live time, we were just glad that a back shoulder throw didn't work against Arnold or draw a penalty like it has in so many cases this year. An attempt by Mac Jones to get the ball to Brian Thomas down here against CD3. Watch how this works out up to the top with Amik Robertson and Terrion Arnold in terms of the pick, how they try to deal with it, and I think it's Terrion Arnold's guy who springs open late. It's a 3rd and 10, so Mac Jones doesn't get there from a progression standpoint. It's an obvious pick situation. I don't mean that it's obvious to Amik Robertson and Terrion Arnold. It's obvious to us watching from the All-22 angle how they were able to get Devin Duvernay open. So I believe this is tight end here, or it's Gabe Davis, stepping out to Arnold to essentially shield him and then run his route late, which is not really a route to get open. All he's doing is trying to allow Devin Duvernay, a former Raven, by the way, to sneak underneath and get open, which he does. Mac Jones doesn't come back to him. He's already decided it's 3rd and 10, so he's going to throw the football down here. CD3 has kind of disrupted Brian Thomas, broken his posture a little bit. You can see Terrion Arnold trailing behind Devin Duvernay. No help in the middle of the field. They're playing man free, but they're bringing that 5th rusher. So mathematically, there is no one to help in the middle of the field in that man free, that version of man free. We're into the second quarter. It's a 3rd and 4. Terrion Arnold up top, CD3 down bottom. And you do have the tight end, Evan Ingram, located in the slot in a bunch or tight trips formation. And they're going to play a cover 2 here, but doing this motion that everyone seems to enjoy to use now, taking the slot or inside receiver, in this case it's Ingram, the tight end, motioning him out. I think Arnold is really good at cover 2 technique. I think he's very good at seeing the quarterback, but also getting some depth to match routes that are underneath. Now, this actually does end up being short in terms of the yard to gain. Anzalone's already off here. He's already been injured. That's why 47 is in the game. I don't know how much Aaron Glenn wants to play cover 2, and I don't pretend to have all the percentages. But I think that Carlton Davis III is better at that technique than people maybe give him credit for, people maybe understand. And in my opinion, Arnold looks very smooth, very comfortable there, particularly in these situations where it's 3rd and 4, and you kind of you have the line to gain in your mind. You know that the other team needs 4 yards. It's a completion that only nets 3 yards. Amik Robertson, Jack Campbell, and Terrion Arnold are there. And, of course, on the very next play, the Jags were able to convert it on a quarterback sneak by Mac Jones. Going to move forward here into the 3rd quarter. The game is over from a competition standpoint. It's 35-6. But I tried to go grab at least 8 or 10 coverage situations for Terrion Arnold to convince you or let you see what I did when watching the film, which was I thought he looked a lot more comfortable no matter who he was guarding. Generally lines up on the right-hand side. In this case, he's matched up against Thomas. It's a 2nd and 9 in the 3rd quarter. Incomplete pass down to the right-hand side. CD3 is out. Kendall Vildor is in. I think it's pretty cool the depth that is there. Kendall Vildor is a competitor. I actually like him as a player. I'm not going to say whether or not I think he's a starting level outside corner at the NFL on a snap-by-snap basis, but I like the fact that if you do have to bring him in for anyone, he can compete. He's got starting experience. I think he's an underrated football player, to be real. Up to the top side, Arnold against Thomas, like I said, and I like the contact. He's got outside leverage. He's not allowing Thomas to get back to the route that he wants. And this, to me, kind of speaks to a couple of things. Number one, playing these corners on the line of scrimmage, threatening press coverage, threatening a hard man concept sets up the cover two. Being able to jam the receiver to the inside and then settle into the flats. jam the receiver to the inside like we've seen a couple of times, and then settle into the flats. Additional to that, I just like the way that they let Arnold play it here with Thomas's release. Basically getting depth, turning now and going, and not worrying so much about jamming and being physical. I think Carlton Davis III is better suited for that style of press man. And in this case, this almost ends up looking like a bail by Terrion Arnold. And I think he can do that a whole lot more effectively than he can press man, trying to be aggressive and get his hands on receivers as much as CD3 does. 3rd and 9 of the very next play. Arnold up here, still have Vildor on the opposite side. Branch is rolled up now to the field. Duvernay trying to run an outside release and then an in route against against Arnold. Kind of gets his hips pointed downfield. So when Duvernay brings this back in, there is a little bit of space to get to this. But the defense I want to focus on here is, again, this is a 3rd and 9. So I'm comfortable with what Brian Branch is doing here, leaving some space underneath, staying on top of that route. Watch how watch how smooth he is on this release by Parker Washington. Pretty good football player. He kind of like reverse baseball turns. So Robertson goes for the outside fake and ends up with his chest and his eyes facing towards that sideline. And then he's going to turn clockwise and come back. I would call this a reverse baseball turn. And he's able to stay with Parker Washington. I mean, he's faster. He's so close to him, in fact, on the coverage that Parker Washington begins to push off right here to kind of create some more separation. And Mac Jones goes there instead of possibly waiting on Duvernay on this later in-breaker, like I said, on the 3rd and 9 against Terrion Arnold. This one falls incomplete. It's 42-6 now, so we're later in the third quarter. I think about 3.5 minutes left. We've still got Terrion Arnold at right outside corner. Carlton Davis III is off at this point. Again, they're playing a zone, and the only thing I would say is it's very difficult to be picky against Terrion Arnold here because Mac Jones is getting out of here in the pocket. So Brian Thomas came from the other side of the field in terms of his pre-snap alignment. He's going to catch the ball somewhere around here by the top of the numbers. Look, we've got a receiver here that I think it's Jack Campbell is trying to match up with. That might be Rodriguez, excuse me. And then Terrion Arnold has eyes on the quarterback who could be scrambling. There's no way that we should say, hey, he should turn and try to match up with this route. That's got to be the responsibility of these guys here matching up. And it's just no man's land for Terrion Arnold, in my opinion. He tries to jump and elevate and get in the window. I would call this a zone delineation. And really this goes to the point that I've made multiple times in videos this year, and you may not like it, I understand, because people want information about football. And so PFF and other rating services, they provide that information quickly. It's a useful service. I'm glad it's there. Nonetheless, who's targeted here? Who do you attribute this target to? Now, you may say, well, Coach, how do you know that they gave this target to someone? I don't. That's the point. PFF doesn't make it transparent on a play-by-play basis. I don't subscribe to PFF. If you do, let me know if you get play-by-play data. Let me know if you do get play-by-play scores. You certainly get a game score that's out there pretty quickly at the end of the week. You didn't show up for a PFF criticism or complaint, but you got one anyway, because I find it laughable to expect that they grade hundreds, thousands, in fact, of NFL players and Division I Power 5 college football players and give us an overall complete grade of all of them by Monday afternoon, maybe Tuesday. But yet, no one ever asks, hey, can I see the score on a random 3rd and 5 in the third quarter with the Lions up 42-6? Can I see how you graded Brian Branch on that play? Can I see how you graded Terrion Arnold on that play? 42-6 still in the third quarter. This is the insane interception by Kirby Joseph. Brian Branch is going to work with some depth. The tight end gets in behind him here, moving towards probably the pylon. Mac Jones is going to throw this kind of off the wrong foot a little bit. There's just nothing on the ball. And Joseph undercuts it. That, you know, you're playing at an insanely high level when the ball is just sticking to your hands, running parallel to the line of scrimmage, undercutting the tight end. I think this ball clearly could be thrown, a little bit further out towards the sideline by Mac Jones. It's just an example of how dangerous those guys are. Even if Kirby Joseph doesn't intercept it, well, Brian Branch doesn't touch the football, but they make the degree of difficulty really high to get anything done down there, particularly by a tight end who's obviously slower of foot and not as explosive as some of the receivers that you face across the rest of the NFL. They're protecting with the tight end on the edge, so he's just trying to disrupt the outside linebacker edge defender. In this case, it's Pascal, Zadarius Smith, and Chase. Nothing on that ball at all. A ridiculous interception. Just another one. Those guys, look, the Detroit Lions secondary, did you think it was going to be this good? Did you think they were going to be this solid in 2024? I knew they'd be far improved. We covered a lot of that on this channel and many others, I'm sure, about how much more talent there was in the secondary. No disrespect towards the guys that played out there last year. Kendall Vildor was one of them, but it looks drastically different. It looks like a basketball team where you've picked up a new best player and a new second best player, as well as a new third or fourth best player. Now the reality is Brian Branch is still the, quote, best player in the secondary, in my opinion. But CD3 is playing at a really high level in recent weeks. In my opinion, he looks different, probably the last 3 or 4 weeks, than you got from a performance standpoint, from an agility standpoint in the first 2 weeks. I think Terrion Arnold has improved at the same time. Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch are playing ridiculous football against the run, as you saw in this video from a Kirby Joseph standpoint. Brian Branch is very physical. I know he got ejected from the game against the Packers. I like the way he plays. I don't like helmet-to-helmet contact. I don't like when people think that they can install a player's intentions. I can't glean his intentions on a play. And in fact, I don't even necessarily often listen to players' evaluations after the play. I'm comfortable enough to say, I don't know what his intentions were, but he's not a guy who plays dirty. And so I don't think he's a dirty. I actually saw that last night as I was preparing for this video. I saw an evaluation of Brian Branch talking about him being dirty and doing things that were outside the game, and I just don't see that at all. I see an all-pro caliber safety who's making plays everywhere in Brian Branch, and then Kirby Joseph, a guy who is, at this point, quarterbacks should be dissuaded from throwing the football in his area. Terrion Arnold is the guy who needed to pick up his level of play. I think he's done that recently. Amik Robertson is more consistent, a solid man-to-man defender, very good out in space, in my opinion. If Terrion Arnold can continue to improve at this rate, I guess I would say slow and steady, nonetheless obvious on film, to me at least, then your secondary in Detroit is just going to continue to play at a ridiculously high level, and you need that with the injuries to Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, Derek Barnes, and now Alex Anzalone. It's a dangerous proposition when you continue to lose guys in the front 6 or front 7. Thankfully, the secondary is of the quality now to make up for it. I think it's been a long time since Detroit's had an overall complete secondary like this one. You guys let me know what you think of that thought in the comment section. And if you agree with my general assertion that Terrion Arnold is playing much better in recent weeks, particularly the last 2 against the Texans and the Jags, despite giving up a touchdown to C.J. Stroud and John Mechie, I think he's finally living up to or moving towards the high level of expectations that Lions fans had when they drafted him in the first round. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy this film study look at Terrion Arnold, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.